All right. Zach and I are back. It is not Monday. It's not Wednesday, our normal days for posting stuff with this podcast. But we decided we're just going to kind of do an emergency recording because last night, Hendon Hooker was not listed in the Heisman finalists. And, you know, you can make a decent argument to say that he could miss that because the three of the four guys that they listed, sure, I think they deserve to be there. Max Duggan, CJ Stroud, and the guy at USC. They had huge seasons, big numbers. You know, you can argue the minutia there where Stroud kind of sucked in November and Duggan doesn't have huge numbers, but he was definitely the most important guy on that team, and he dragged that team to victory on so many different occasions. So, you know, he was huge there, undefeated season, and you know, there. I think everything's kind of laid out for them, but it was that fourth spot. Obviously, we all think it should have been Hendon Hooker, and I believe that wholeheartedly. It could have been Bryce Young, and I think I probably wouldn't have complained too much. I'd been like, yeah, he's really, really good. He had a huge season. He even missed a game and had a huge season. But they put this kid from Georgia, Stetson Bennett, in this spot. And I have not heard a single compelling argument as to why that would be the case. Nobody. I haven't seen. I've seen the excuses from the media members. I mean, how many people vote on this award? It's hundreds of these idiots that vote for this award. And they're trying to make excuses. I'll talk about one in just a second. And none of it makes sense. He has numbers that don't match up anywhere. Like, there's freaking 7 or 8 guys that I could put ahead probably of Stetson Bennett here. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's an embarrassment to this award. It's an embarrassment. It's an embarrassment for an award that was already an embarrassment. Like, the Heisman Trophy was already stupid. We all knew it's just a popularity contest, but this is the most shameless. This is as if the College Football Playoff Committee had put Alabama in the playoff. I think it's nearly equal. It's that shameless and stupid. Zach, your thoughts?
Pretty much the same. When you think about a Heisman finalist, Hendon Hooker is pretty much everything you could want. No, Tennessee didn't make the playoff, but to me, that's the only strike against him, and really shouldn't matter because that's not what the award is. But
Yeah.
we acknowledged before the season that is part of it, and I think we said, hey, Tennessee needs to win at least 9 or 10 games and maybe be in the playoff discussion for Hooker to get to New York along with the numbers, just because that's the way the award voting goes. And all of that happened. Tennessee's very much in the conversation. Number 6 team in the country, barely left out. Would have been in if not for the South Carolina loss. Put up great numbers, great character, great role model. I mean, he's everything that you could want in a Heisman Trophy contender. He's not out there running his mouth like Caleb Williams. He's putting up better numbers than Stetson Bennett. He's took Tennessee to 10 wins and beat Alabama, stuff that we did not think would happen this year. Even diehard Tennessee fans, a lot of them didn't think it would happen. Did everything he's supposed to do. His one strike against him is that South Carolina loss and then tearing his ACL, which he had no control over, which caused him to miss a game. But even missing that game, Stetson Bennett had 3,609 total yards, 27 total touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. Hendon Hooker had 3,565 total yards, 32 total touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. So he played 2 fewer games than Stetson Bennett, had 50 less total yards and 5 more touchdowns. I don't see what the argument can be. And they play mostly the same schedule. They played 5 common opponents against those teams. Hooker had 700 and some more total yards than Bennett. And the argument from Georgia fans, and this is how you know that their argument's deeply flawed, is because it's a whole bunch of what ifs. And, well, if Kirby Smart wanted to score 60 points a game, well, if they wanted to keep throwing and being pass heavy like Tennessee, these are all these arguments they're throwing out, and they're just not accurate. One, Tennessee's a run first team. Kirby Smart himself said that before he played Tennessee. They led the nation in rushing touchdowns. 2, Hendon Hooker didn't play in the later parts of a lot of games. I don't think he played at all in the second half against UT Martin. He left the Akron game early. I believe he left the LSU game early. He left the Missouri game early because they were blowout wins. And I think he might have even left the Kentucky game early. I can't remember for sure. But against Missouri and Kentucky, go look at what Stetson Bennett did. Georgia barely won those games. I think he threw for 300 yards against Missouri, no touchdowns. Georgia won by 5 points. They beat Kentucky by 10. So it's not, I mean, they're trying to make it out like, oh, Georgia blew out everybody and there was no reason for Stetson Bennett to play half the games. Well, he still had more pass attempts than Hooker. Hooker was in the same situation a lot of the time. So none of their arguments really carry any weight. And it's nothing against Stetson Bennett. He's a great story, walk on, lead his team to a national championship. Whatever you think of Georgia, it's a cool college football story. And it's I appreciate it and I respect it for what it is, but he doesn't deserve that spot over Hendon Hooker.
So I just want to, I don't want to totally I mean, I don't think you could even straw the argument from the other side. The arguments from the other side just suck. But I want to actually read a full one here. So this is Blake Toppmeyer of USA Today. He previously was actually a writer in Knoxville. I know him somewhat. I don't dunk on him here to try to be rude. He's never been anything but nice to me. Let me preface that if he sees this. I don't have a personal qualm with Blake Toppmeyer. But here's the thing. He's a Heisman voter. I think most of the people at the Knoxville Sentinel are also who write about Tennessee are Heisman voters also. Like I said, it's a ton of people that do. So this is what he said as sort of an excuse for this whole thing. He said the Heisman Trophy is sort of like a golf tournament. September and October performance allow you to make the cut. But unlike golf, the scores are reset after the cut. Everyone who made the cut starts at 0 in November, and it is a 5-week sprint to the award. Okay. It's kind of ridiculous, but sure. That's not the criteria at all, I don't think. That's not what they would be told by the people that run the Heisman Award. I don't know what the exact criteria is, but I can tell you it's not that. But okay, if you want to lay everything on November, because that's essentially what he's saying. He's like, you narrow it down to a certain set of guys, and then you see what they do in November. Okay, if I'm going to give them that, I don't feel like I need to. But even if I did, here's the Novembers for a few of these guys. Stetson Bennett, 802 yards, 7 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. I believe 2 of those came against Kentucky. You were already saying his game against Kentucky was atrocious. His game against Georgia Tech did almost nothing. I mean, they barely had to, and in that Georgia Tech game, it was kind of close in the first half. It's just ridiculous. Bryce Young, 1,101 yards, 9 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. So far outweighs Stetson Bennett in November. CJ Stroud.
They did play Austin P.
They did play on that is true. That is true. But one of those was Ole Miss. At Ole Miss was a tough game, came down right to the end, and he played well and kind of carried them to that win. But regardless, CJ Stroud in November. And I think CJ Stroud had a rough November, but 963 yards passing, 8 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and then Hendon Hooker, 797 yards passing, 6 touchdowns, 1 interception. So almost identical yards to Stetson Bennett in without an entire game that Stetson Bennett played.
He played an entirely less game. Plus, really
game and a half.
Quarters. Yeah.
And still 6 touchdowns, which is 1 less touchdown than Bennett threw, 797 yards, almost exactly identical, and 2 less interceptions in November. Okay. And I know it's not completely stats based. There's sort of a eye test element to it or whatever, and things like how much did the team run the ball? How much ahead were you? Did you even need him? Yada, yada. Even then, this argument doesn't hold up. In November, he did nothing of consequence. He played a solid game in the SEC championship game. Okay. Cool. That's one game. But if November is the benchmark, he didn't do that either. These excuses don't hold up even a little bit. Like I said, you could make to me, I know there are definitely some Tennessee fans that wouldn't even want to hear this. You could, to me, say just the injury combined with everything else, like and what Bryce Young has done this season, you can make a decent argument that you could put him in that fourth slot. I disagree. I think it should still be Hendon Hooker just because of the immense importance to his team that he played this season and the Heisman moment, quote unquote Heisman moments that he had. He beat Bryce Young. He outdueled Bryce Young in a game and had that unbelievable Heisman moment at the end of the Alabama game. Like, I disagree with that, but you could make a fair argument that I'm going to go like, okay, I get it. I get what you're saying in that case. But with Stetson Bennett, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Like I said, it's a joke on top of an award that's already a joke. Just a complete embarrassment to anything that has to do with the Heisman. Everyone who voted for this should be completely embarrassed and shamed. Like, we should all just shame on them. And a lot of people did. You saw multiple sort of national figures, but people who aren't Heisman voters or anything kind of be like, this is an absolute joke. Tons of former Tennessee players and Robert Griffin III, who's become a huge advocate for Tennessee football for some reason. he was blasting out there about it, saying Hooker should have been a finalist. Like, I don't know. I would love to hear any kind of a legitimate argument for this, but there isn't one. That's the thing. There's just not one. Fall is in the air, and that means fall grilling with cookouts, tailgate parties, and so much more. Luckily, the flavor experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy to savor all the flavors of fall with their mouthwatering assortments of perfectly aged steaks, ultra juicy burgers, and easy to prepare comfort meals that are ready in a flash. And now is the perfect time to load up on all this incredible flavor and take advantage of 50% off site-wide by shopping their friends and family sale. Go to omahasteaks.com and use my promo code Vols, that is VOLS, at checkout and get $30 off your order. And guys, I've said it in these ads for weeks now. I've had all of the stuff from Omaha Steaks. I can't endorse it enough. Everything has been high quality. It comes right to your door, so easy and convenient, and I mean, most importantly, tasty. So I wouldn't say it if I didn't believe it. So don't wait. Go to omahasteaks.com and stock up today. Omaha Steaks isn't just steak. It's the best steak of your life, guaranteed. And don't forget to score that extra $30 off your order when you use Vols at checkout, VOLS. Omaha Steaks is perfect for those chilly and busy fall nights. You won't come close to getting this kind of quality at the grocery store. Visit omahasteaks.com. Promo code Vols at checkout. Minimum order may be required. Omaha Steaks.
No, there's definitely not. And just so we take care of every single argument that they've thrown out there, the South Carolina game, Stetson Bennett, 284 yards against South Carolina, 2 passing touchdowns, and I believe he had a rushing touchdown. So a pretty good day for him. Hendon Hooker, though, 247 yards, 3 passing touchdowns, no interceptions, 25 rushing yards against South Carolina before getting injured and coming out of that game when Tennessee was still trying to score. I mean, he probably would have had over 300 passing yards in that game, even though it was a loss. Tennessee lost that game because the defense did not show up to play. The offense could have been more crisp. It could have been better. They missed some plays, but they still scored 38 points. And 3 of those touchdowns, passing touchdowns, belonged to Hendon Hooker in that game. So he wasn't the reason they lost that game. It's not really a compelling argument to throw that out there as a reason that he shouldn't be a finalist. So I do think the November thing probably does play into it just because of recency bias. And I don't know if Blake Toppmeyer was saying that that's how he voted or how he feels like people vote. I do think that's probably the case to some extent. Maybe moving forward, they should have the voters vote first quarter, second quarter, third quarter of the season. You vote after September, you vote after October, you vote after November, or maybe you vote on what they did that particular month and you tally it all at the end. I mean, that would be a season-long look at things because it feels like Hendon Hooker's not getting any credit for that game against Alabama, which was one of the best games by any quarterback in the country this season, where he had his Heisman moment, where he leads the game-winning drive with 15 seconds to go. Nobody in college football had a moment like that this season that was that big on that big of a stage with the whole country watching in a game that really a ton of pressure on Tennessee by that point in the game. We've talked about how they went into that game kind of with nothing to lose, and by halftime it was, everything had flipped, and that's a game you got to win all of a sudden. Hooker stayed composed, did what he had to do, outdueled Bryce Young, who also had a fantastic game that day as well. Certainly both of the games that those players had that day was better than any game Stetson Bennett had all season long. So I think it's the playoff, it's Hooker's injury. It's the story of Bennett. You know they're going to play that up a lot next Saturday throughout the Heisman ceremony. There's going to be a lot of talk about Bennett being a walk-on and all of that. So I don't think he has a chance to win the award, though, just because Caleb Williams' numbers at USC were so much better than Bennett's, despite everything that happened in the Utah game, which he did. You know, he battled through some injuries there. The kid was barely moving, even though they lost that game and ended up getting away from him really bad in the fourth quarter. It was impressive, the fact that he was even out there. I know that there's a lot of stuff about the fingernails being painted and all that, but ultimately that's not going to factor into the voting. It didn't matter with Johnny Manziel, didn't matter with Baker Mayfield. That's not going to be a factor. Stetson Bennett wins it over Caleb Williams. I mean, I will understand USC fans having the same reaction that Tennessee fans have right now with Hooker not even being a finalist. So it does feel kind of bogus today, and that's a shame because it's such a historic award.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously Tennessee fans, you look back at the history of Tennessee with this award, and we hate it for obvious reasons. Peyton Manning didn't win it and lost it to a defensive player. For any Tennessee fans that, you know, there are a lot of Tennessee fans at this point that weren't alive back then.
Johnny Majors lost it to a guy that had a losing record. I don't think
that's embarrassing.
The only time it's happened or something. So yeah, they be the third time. And I don't necessarily think Hooker probably should have won the award, because I don't know his numbers were good enough with the injury and everything that happened. If you're being completely objective and you just look at blind resumes, I understand the case for Caleb Williams to win the award. I do, but I mean, Hooker absolutely deserved to at least be on that stage and at that ceremony.
Absolutely. Like, to me, it's just not even really debatable. Again, you could give an argument that I would give credence to with a Bryce Young. But otherwise, I mean, I disagree with even that. It just isn't even. It's just not there. It should have been Hooker on that stage. It's absolutely absurd, ridiculous.
There's an argument for him to be over Duggan as well. I mean, Duggan's numbers weren't. I mean, if played 2 more games and they're still very similar numbers, I think Hooker had more rushing yards. Duggan might have had a few more passing yards or something, but they were right there. Very similar. And I think it was a 250, 300 yard gap. If Hooker plays against Vanderbilt, the numbers are equal, maybe even slightly better in Hooker's favor. And he still even then played one less game than Max Duggan. So there's an argument there as well that he should be above at least 2 of them. And, you know, I think we kind of assumed Stroud and Williams would be in there. Those other 2 spots are the ones we weren't sure about.
I think the great Vol, Peerless Price, he said it the best way I think you can. He tweeted this last night. He said, "The Heisman Trophy is a joke. Just say you're going to give it to the best player on the best team. It's not reserved for the best players in the country anymore." That's absolutely it. And that's been true for years and years now. It's a popularity contest.
It's too bad Stetson Bennett's not even the best player on his team.
That's
He's not
true.
even the best offensive player on his team. I mean, what would he be without Brock Bowers?
Exactly. He is not the best player on his team. That's absolutely true. It's just, I don't think you can really adequately express how completely absurd this is, how stupid. And I mean, I'm expecting another one. I think it's in a few weeks, but the Biletnikoff Award with Jalen Hyatt, it's not even close, frankly. It's between Jalen Hyatt and the kid at Ohio State,
Marvin Harrison
Jr. And the stats are better. The stats against top teams are better. The spectacular plays for Hyatt are better. The singular, sort of award-winning games, like, a Heisman moment of sorts, a Biletnikoff moment, 5 touchdowns against Alabama for Jalen Hyatt. I mean, it's another one that's just like not even there, but it's a popularity contest. Now, I will say I've been a voter on a award like the Biletnikoff before, and everybody can't watch all of college football. You can only watch the most popular college football. And a lot of times the guys for those awards who vote for those awards were just kind of looking at like who had the best stats. And by far, Jalen Hyatt had the best stats. So maybe that lifts him, but you just think Marvin Harrison shares a name with his dad. There's recognition there. He plays at Ohio State. They're in the playoff. There's recognition there. I mean, Lord knows he'll probably get steamrolled in that one too, even though we all know that Hyatt should be the winner there also. But we'll cross that bridge when it comes. He will win it again. I think so many guys that vote for that award, they're just gonna kind of look at the stats and be like, okay, Hyatt's the best. Here's my vote. Hopefully, that's what ends up happening. But we'll see.
Well, you would think that Hyatt had such name recognition this year. He was such a big story that that would help him, but so was Hooker, and that didn't help him in the Heisman voting. So I'm not really sure. I mean, I kind of think he'll end up being Marvin Harrison just because of the name and where he plays, and they're in the playoff.
I think
Uh,
there is a real argument to be made that the hate for the Tennessee fan base is a real factor in this type of stuff because the people who vote for these awards are the people that we rip into constantly. And I'm not saying stop that. Don't stop that. Screw these people. Screw these people to freaking, across the earth and back. I don't care. They can all suck it. But I do think that's a factor because I don't think they like Tennessee. If you said that to them, no, it's a conspiracy theory. No, shut up. You don't like us. We know you don't like us. That's the Ohio State fans don't yell at you as much. That's the difference.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. And if you can so tell with some of the national media when they're pandering to Tennessee fans a little bit because they know if they're on the right side of it that they're going to get all this love from Tennessee fans on Twitter, and you see that often. And then you go look at how they vote for stuff, and they don't vote the way that their actions suggest that they should. There's some popular national media guys that people like, hey, they back Tennessee a lot, and then you go look at their ballots, and you might be disappointed to see that they also had Tennessee behind Alabama after suggesting on Twitter that maybe they shouldn't be.
And that's why I say don't stop tweeting at these people or anything. They deserve it. We'll finish with this on a lighter note. I love this. Speaking of Jalen Hyatt, the should-be Biletnikoff winner, he finally signed with Hyatt Hotels. He signed an NIL deal with Hyatt Hotels. I love it. They put out a little graphic that says World of Hyatt, and it has a picture of Jalen Hyatt, and it's great. But you wrote about this, Zach. You kind of said that this is possibly a good sign for Hyatt playing in the bowl game. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, and it's just the way I take it. Completely speculation. We don't know Hyatt's plans yet. He hasn't declared for the draft. He hasn't said anything as of yet about playing in the bowl game. But this deal has kind of got a connection to the Orange Bowl in the sense that Hyatt, via the hotel, via the NIL deal, will be gifting Tennessee's players a credit that's equivalent to the what it would cost to stay in Miami for the Orange Bowl. I'm assuming for their families to come watch the bowl game and to be able to stay without having to bear that expense. Well, you would think if Hyatt's doing that, if it's all kind of tied together, that's part of their NIL deal that Hyatt Hotels wants Jalen to play in that game. They want him on that stage. I mean, that's the point of an endorsement deal, right? You want him to be visible. There's going to be a lot of eyes on that game. It's primetime game against Clemson. It's the Orange Bowl. We talked about it on the podcast on Monday, how it might be the most compelling bowl game of any non-playoff game. So to me, it kind of signals that maybe he is going to play in this bowl game, and maybe that was his intent all along. We don't know. But it does seem like with that, the way this deal was worded and the way that it's been promoted, kind of connected to the Orange Bowl, that you would think he would be there playing in that game.
I sure hope that it is, because I think it's a great move for everybody. Obviously, Hyatt gets paid, and that's amazing, and he gets the exposure of being tied to such a huge brand, and that's really cool.
And he also definitely deserves that deal. I mean, he's become such a notable player nationwide. He's worthy of just a legitimate NIL deal like that.
Absolutely. And I think with the transfer portal opening up, I mean, what an endorsement for Tennessee's NIL work, getting this guy tied in.
Good timing, yeah. Good point.
Yeah. I mean, getting him tied in with one of the biggest hotel brands in the world is incredible, and a ringing endorsement for, hey, if you come to Tennessee, you're going to be set. We're going to set you up with good deals, lots of money. And so there's that. And then as far as the bowl game goes, I think it also speaks to some of the stuff that we said yesterday, where like really Tennessee Clemson in the Orange Bowl is the biggest. It's the most high profile game outside of the playoff coming up, because, you factor in like Alabama, they're ranked higher, and it's Nick Saban and stuff, but Alabama doesn't want to be playing in that game. And they're playing Kansas State, which is a smaller.
A noon game as well.
Yes, a noon game, Orange Bowl's prime time. It's going to be the only game on more or less at that time slot outside of maybe like some basketball games or something. And so, you're all eyes of the college football world will be on at that point. I wonder if they really like during the game there might be something with Jalen Hyatt if it ends up being what we think. If there might be some plug at that point with him and Hyatt
That's
Hotels.
the
I don't
other
know.
that's the other thing that would lead Hyatt Hotels to wanting him to play in this game is if you remember last year when Alontae Taylor had that the cookie deal, the cookie NIL deal where people got free cookies if you got an interception. That was talked about a lot during broadcast. The ESPN, whoever was doing the game, he got an interception. I remember them bringing that up. Like it got them. That was a deal that I feel really worked out in their favor. Taylor brought a lot of attention to them. Unfortunately, Cedric Tillman this year, they didn't get the same amount of attention as he didn't play as much. He was kind of their guy for that deal this year. But that attention, I mean, if ESPN mentions this deal a couple of times, how much is that worth to Hyatt Hotels? I mean, that's free advertising on a national broadcast. Of course they want that.
And you really have the storyline of Hyatt wanting that redemption over a South Carolina-based team and a team that didn't recruit him and all of that. I'm sure that
Plus,
will
he's
be
32 yards away from the single season record at Tennessee for receiving yards. So plenty of reasons for him to play in the bowl game.
Yeah, that's an incredible deal, and I think that's what it means. I think he'll be in this bowl game. We already kind of speculated he probably wants to break that record, probably wants the redemption against the South Carolina team, and so maybe that is what it is, and we'll get to see him have a big game against Clemson. That would be amazing.
And I would understand if he does opt out because, look, it's all about the NFL. It's all about your future. It's all about your career. You got to make as much money as possible. You got a couple of shots at some contracts in the NFL as a wide receiver. You don't get but maybe you get one post-rookie deal. Maybe you get a second one if you're a really good player. So it's you're trying to make as much money as fast as you can. I understand why players want to go ahead and jump to the NFL after their third year. But if something happens to Hyatt, if he gets injured, hopefully he does not. If he plays, hopefully nobody does. He's still got the fallback of coming back to Tennessee for another year.
Yeah.
He's going to have these NIL deals. He's not going to be hurting for money in that aspect. And he can come back and do it again. He's going to have Joe Milton most likely as the starting quarterback next year. And as long as Hyatt can catch up to those passes, he'd be in line for another huge year. And we've seen Joe Milton's strength is kind of those deep throws, which plays right into Hyatt. I don't think there'd be much drop-off as far as Hyatt's production. I think he'd continue to play at the same level with Milton as he has with Hooker this year. So there is some insurance there if he plays in the bowl game and something doesn't, goes wrong, God forbid.
Hopefully nothing like that happens, and hopefully he just has a big game and this brand deal is amazing and caps off an incredible year that he's already had. And hopefully the people that vote for the Biletnikoff Awards aren't as big of idiots as I am assuming they might be.
Probably a lot of the same people.
It probably is. All right. Charlie Burris, that is Zach Reagan. We're going to have Crompton on Wednesday. At least as of right now, we have it scheduled. He's sort of all over the place. He's a very busy man, but if we can get him tied down and in here, we're going to have that posted tomorrow or maybe a little later this week. I don't know. I'm trying to decide the schedule for things I want to post this week. But regardless, we're going to be talking to Jonathan Crompton later this week about the Orange Bowl and everything that's gone down. Maybe a little Heisman Trophy talk in that one too. And so look out for that on the A to Z Sports YouTube page. And other than that, I think that is it for today. And we will talk to everybody a little later this week.
See you guys then.